Hey guys, Nick here. I'm going to go ahead and just state the obvious. This is a marketing tool for my real estate business. I've been a realtor for 20 years right here in Nashville, but who wants to listen to a boring podcast about real estate? Good news, it's not. This is a podcast about people that I've built relationships with since I moved here in 1988. If what I stand for resonates with you and you're looking to buy or sell a home in this area, let's talk. No pressure, just a conversation, kind of like this podcast.
This is the 615 Podcast with your host, veteran realtor and entrepreneur, Nick Woodard.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. We are talking to seriously one of my favorite people. I've known this guy for probably 15 years or more. He's a former real estate client of mine and someone that I've always loved just talking and spending time with. This guy's one of the most respected songwriters in Nashville. He's written hit songs for Brad Paisley, Joe Nichols, Carrie Underwood, Keith Underwood, Randy Houser, Kenny Chesney, Luke Bryan, Rascal Flatts, Tracy Bird. Am I getting them?
Jason Aldean.
Aldean.
Let's make sure we get him in there.
Got Buddy Jewel, and of course, Jason Aldean. This is my friend, Mr. Kelley Lovelace.
Nick, glad to be here, buddy.
Thanks for coming, man.
Absolutely.
Absolute joy. I really want to talk about, so I grew up in Nashville. I've been around all the artists and the singers and all that, but I've always been completely enamored by songwriters. I think you guys are the ones that, I hate to say it because my wife manages one, but y'all have the talent. I love the songwriters.
Well, thank you very much. If songwriters, and everybody's different because you have a lot of songwriters that are artists, also,
Of course.
and they either didn't pursue it or a record deal didn't work out. So they're artists and songwriters. I've always been just a straight up songwriter. And definitely for me, like you say, you respect the songwriters most. And I do. I respect the songwriters. Obviously, that's what I am. And I have a lot of legends I look up to. But just having the artists and the relationship and the ones that actually are very good writers, which there are a bunch of them, that's a gift to me because that helps get my ideas and my songs out, by knowing that artist and getting to write with them.
Well, that's one thing I definitely wanted to talk about. Like, it's always fascinated me, and I know I've told you this, before, but it just fascinates me how you guys can schedule time to be creative. Like, you'll put an appointment together with someone else and go, hey, Tuesday at 4:00, we're going to sit down and be creative.
Yeah.
Like, walk us through what that looks like.
It's odd. It got to be normal, but when I first signed it at the time as EMI years ago, it was, I think, 98. And I remember getting signed. At the time, EMI is the biggest publisher in the world. And I was excited to be over there. And I thought, man, I must be a great writer for EMI to sign me. And I'm just going to, and we moved into a new house and everything. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get the house ready. And when I come up with a great idea, then I'm going to write. And I'll get inspired. And then, a few weeks went by, no ideas. A month or two went by, no ideas. I thought, they're not really coming along. And I read something online, and I think it was Beethoven. It was a quote, and it said, "A great artist does not wait to become inspired to go to work. He goes to work hard every day and becomes inspired by his efforts." And I think that was God speaking to me, like, "Hey, get off your butt and start working." So I got into the co-writing aspect of it, which is, it's awkward at first because, like, me and you are writing, and you throw out an idea, and maybe I like it, maybe I don't. The same. Or I throw a line to you and I say, "Man, this is great. Here's what it is." And you just look over and say, "Yeah, I don't really care for that line, bud. What about this?" Well, then you got to first get over yourself a little bit and, and not be irritated that you didn't like my line, right? So I'm not going to like your line either, And so, but then you get to a place where later it's so comfortable that you never get rubbed the wrong way. You just realize, hey, if the people in the room don't like this particular line, we'll come up with something that's better,
Right.
And you're never really going to be irritated leaving the room. I don't know it's been so many years I've left. I don't think I ever leave a room being irritated that somebody didn't like a line.
Right.
Because it's a co-write. And if it's not right for the whole room, it's not right.
So do you tend to, and I actually know this answer, but you guys tend to gravitate to people, you've made a connection with somebody in the past and you work well together. So do you guys get together and go, hey, maybe this idea will work for this artist, or are you just trying to come up with a great song and a great idea and just wherever it goes is wherever it goes?
It's really kind of both. But for me, I do like to target right. like with Brad Paisley had so much success. He and I together, and our other group of co-writers, and I knew him so well. We were together all the time. I knew what he wouldn't say. I knew what he would say. It's a huge advantage to a songwriter.
We all went to school together, right?
We met at Belmont. Had very similar personalities. Got to be buddies, and we lived in the same farm for 15 years, and just, I don't know, legally as close to an artist as I could move, which is like 3,800 yards. So anyway, he got to hear all my crappy ideas, but eventually you get some good ones in there, and that's a huge benefit to be able to do that. And so anytime he was going in the studio, it could be like a 14-month process. I didn't leave the farm. We just wrote all the time, and you were on just for him, because all I got to do is come up with the right idea, and he's right there, and we're going to write it, and he's going to record it on the farm. So it was such an in-house thing. And then now, even other relationships with artists that you get to know, like when Aldean, when he's going in, I'm completely 100% focused on trying to get on Aldean's record. Yeah. And to get to know him a little bit more, get to know his, the guys in his band like Kurt and Tully, and then Neil and I've been buddies forever, and just kind of get inside his head a little bit. And so it's fun to chase those people that and that you're fans of. And then when they're not recording and you don't have a personal relationship with an artist and you're going in to write, you're just trying to write the best thing possible that day for me.
Okay. Well, talking as a Nashville native, I understand how this works, but for maybe people that, didn't grow up around this, explain to them like what getting a cut is. Like your ultimate desire is to have your song put on somebody's album. Yeah. So how does that work, getting your song on their album?
It's kind of interesting. Even when you say the word cut, because a lot of people don't know, said, what's a cut? And like we know, because been in Nashville, and so we understand the lingo and stuff. But the old vinyl records, the needle and everything, you had a groove, you had a cut, in the record. And so that's where that term came from. If you got a song recorded, you got a cut, because you're on there. That's
cool.
And nowadays,
never knew that.
Now it's numbers and stuff, but it's still we call it a cut. Getting to me. The most important thing financially, and to take care of your family and just to stay in business, you got to be on the radio. But to be on the radio, you got to get a cut. If you're not getting cut, you're not getting on the radio. It's impossible. And nowadays, and used to.
Has that changed a lot recently?
It's changed. It's gotten, to me, it's gotten harder. I guess we've always said that, maybe it's the same degree of hard. Right. I don't know. It's just, yeah. And there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of talent in town. There always has been. And I think when you're newer, you don't realize how hard it is. And so you don't think about how impossible it is to get a song recorded, because you're just dreaming and writing and staying up all night and everything. And then you learn a lot, and you think, God, it's going to be so hard to get in that camp, And when I say camp, like a new artist camp, or to crack in Morgan Wallen's camp and his guys, man, good luck, because he's got the best and his friends writing, and they're doing so good. They don't need you, you know what I mean? Like if they're already doing that good, you can't, how am I going to help that? They're already doing as good as they can possibly do. They're killing.
So for like comparison's sake, people look at you, us in Nashville know you're a very successful, you've been in it a long time. You've had a lot of cuts on multiple albums. What is the process of getting from point A to point B? Like, who does it go through? Like, how do you get your stuff in front of somebody if you don't have that relationship with them already?
That's a good question. For me, it's the steps of, one, it's mandatory to have a publisher. You need a publisher, and there's different degrees of how much publishing they have, but if you look at things we'll get to that. That's a financial thing. So to me, you need a publisher, so that if I don't have a relationship with an artist and I'm trying to get into a particular camp, or if I write a song for Blake Shelton, but I don't know how to get to Blake Shelton, hopefully my publisher does. And I say, hey, we wrote this. It is for him. This is about his hometown. This is about his life. We've been reading about it and everything. Can you get this to some of his people? And your publisher would do that. And your publisher also, today's kind of a different game in the sense that the publisher is trying to create cuts in the room, meaning that they're trying to put you in a room with somebody that knows Luke Combs. May not be his exact co-writers, but maybe he's a distant cousin, or something. There's some sort of attachment to an artist to create money in the room, because the best song doesn't always win, and that's not a slam to any songs.
Sure.
It's just it's the best songs with whatever is happening within that camp and within that group, and they're pretty dang good, So for you to break in that, I mean, your song has to be 100% better than those really amazing songs, which is it's gonna be tough.
So, like, for comparison's sake, how many number ones have you written?
18.
18. So, how many top 10s do you think you've written?
I don't know. I hadn't. I don't know. Maybe 25.
Okay, so let's take
30.
those numbers and go. But how many songs have you written? So that's to show, yes, you're a very successful person, but it's still a very small number of the actual songs you've written. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of your craft to actually get one of those that hits. Yeah,
I always tell people that the majority of my days are completely meaningless. Because they really are. The majority of your songs do not get recorded. They just don't. And people always said, hey, writing is like working out. It's like working a muscle. If you're just not doing it, nothing's going to happen. I do get that. It is easier. The more you do it, the quicker you are. Yeah. It just works that way. But the majority of things are not going to get recorded. And probably, like, it seems like on ASCAP, when you've got songs that are turned in from a publisher and they're putting them in the system, maybe I have, 15, 1,800,
wow.
And which that's not a lot though. Like if you have prolific writers that write all the time, sometimes 2 times a day, whether it's Ashley Gorley or Brett James or something, they may say, oh dude, I've got 8,000. You know what I mean? Yeah. So everybody's not the same. And
so do you have just like stacks of notebooks of stuff you've written over the years?
I've just put everything into everything now is just in a computer, so it's in an EMI catalog, a Warner Chappell catalog, a Seagull catalog, now at Red Street Publishing catalog with Jay DeMarcus and Kelly King. That's where I'm at right now. And so now they're just in those computers. But for me, I just have ideas in a Microsoft Word file that I just keep adding to year after year after year. And there's thousands of ideas in there that I skim over every day. Yeah. And I don't write. I keep jumping over it, but I never erase them. Even if they're terrible, I never erase it. That's weird. I don't know why. I just jump over and say, what a terrible idea. And then
but it's what you were thinking at that time in your life, maybe, there was something that stood out to you. And that was another question I had is, do you just have things happen to you and just an idea pops into your head?
Yes.
And tell us a story about that becoming a song.
Okay, I've got it. It's a fairly recent one. They both involve my wife Rachel, and she's amazing, and she's gotten used to when we're watching a movie or watching a Netflix thing or whatever. I used to pause it, say, "Hey, pause that for a minute," but then I realized how annoying that was.
Yeah.
So now I just get away from the fact. Okay, I'm going to miss these next few lines, and I'll just jot down an idea that I've got from somebody saying something off on a Netflix show or something like that. And she's gotten now to where she'll say, "What was it? What I do?" Write down. I said, "You'll never get it." She goes, "What is it? Like, give me a chance." I said, "You won't get it. It's not because it's never exactly what they say. Right. They say something." And it makes me think of something completely different that nobody in the world would think of. Now, another writer would get something else out of it, and they would write a whole different, piece of it. But for my mind, I write this idea down. And so anyway, but one story that relates exactly to that, and a song that ended up getting recorded, is my wife. We were in the apartments over at by Vanderbilt Legends golf course, right? So we were there waiting on the house and everything, and I was watching a basketball game, Vols basketball game, which they're struggling a little bit right now. But I always pace when I watch sports. And she was over there at the sink and kitchen doing something, and I was watching it and pacing, and she was talking to me, and I wasn't responding. And she said, "Wow, tough crowd." And then I stopped the game, looked over, said, "What'd you say?" And she said, "Tough crowd." And I said, "That's brilliant." And then I put the game back on and started watching it. And tough crowd that's not a unique couple of words, right? It's been around forever. When she said it, for whatever reason, I saw saw the song in my head, and the tough crowd, it's not a crowd that doesn't like you. It's a crowd that's really tough out there. They're blue collar. They've been through cancer. They've been through all this stuff, and they're a tough crowd. So this performer is going to give them, he's going to salute them and give them a good show because they're a tough crowd.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a total Aldean thing. And I called Neil Thrasher because I was like, all right, that song he could be all over. And we got Kurt and Tully, and we all wrote that thing. And
you gave her credit for it, of
Aldean
course.
recorded it. She's not now. Yeah, she's not actually on the credits underneath the title, but
she's getting all your stuff anyway.
We'll always know. We'll always know where it came from.
All right. Well, I want to pivot this into something else. So, like myself, you're a proud conservative, and you don't hide that. Maybe it's a little different for you because you're in an industry where maybe you kind of have to watch your P's and Q's a little bit. But you did write a song that had a little bit of controversy lately. So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, it actually wasn't on purpose. But and that was actually at the same apartments where that came up with. I was outside doing my morning walk. I do like a prayer walk, and I tell people sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes 15, just depends on what I got, you know. And so I just prayed and everything. I was in a great place. That in Jesus' name, amen. And just walking around. But then I started thinking about what I'd watch on the news. I watch news around the clock. Probably shouldn't, but I do.
Don't do that.
I know.
Don't do that.
I'm working on it. No, I'm not. I'm not working on it at all. You know.
Now that Trump's back in, it's enjoyable again, though.
Yeah. Now it's a little more fun, but still, even with him, you never know with what he's going to say. He's like, "Oh, don't say that," you know. But anyway, I started thinking about what I'd watch, and they'd put together these scenes of violence in some city on some sidewalk, and there's this little lady just walking down the sidewalk. She had her mask on, you know, and the stranger just comes up and just cold cocks her right in the face and knocks her out. Not just knocks her down, but knocks her out. And they go to the next frame, and it's another city, another sidewalk. A guy's just walking down there. Somebody comes up behind him with an aluminum baseball bat, full on hip turn in the back of the head, knocks him out, completely out. Then they go to some other things like 6 guys beating up a 70-year-old man and stuff like that. And so I just started getting madder and madder. And just thinking about that, and I said, try that in a small town, you know, because I just didn't like, because the reason I was able to watch that on TV is because somebody's recording it. They're not helping the people.
Yeah.
They're just recording
just standing around.
You know, wow, do you see that? And maybe they're going to get more followers because they have this great content or whatever. And I'm thinking, help the man, for God's sake. You know, why am I not seeing somebody reaching down and pulling that person up? You know, so Nick, I called Neil Thrasher, buddy and co-writer. We write every Tuesday, especially if it's raining. If it's sunny, we play a lot of golf, you know. But anyway, I called him, and he said, well, Kelley, it looks like it's a good day to play some golf. And I said, I don't know, we may want to do something different. And I told him the story and everything, and he goes, all right, damn it, come on over. And so we got over there and just started talking about it. And he'd been recently writing a lot with Kurt and Tully that are in Aldean's band, have been his band forever. And said, man, this would be a great thing to write with them. And we just started on it, got talking about it. And, you know, even Neil was saying, man, I think there's really only one artist that would even say this. Because generally we are writing songs to make money, right? And so we're not going to purposely write a song, you know, that we don't think anybody's going to record, right? And so it was very limited pitch, and we wrote it specifically for Aldean, and you know, and it just kind of did everything about that verse, just starting it, is exactly what we saw on TV. It was really an easy, people say, oh, it's an easy song to write. It just kind of fell out. It really did, because it was just what you're seeing, you know, and it was, and Neil had this cool melody and stuff. And then anyway, just the 4 of us together, we were meant to get together and get to know each other during the writing and creation of that song.
So you obviously had no concept that this would be twisted into some sort of controversial song.
I really didn't, but because to me, that I felt like that's our format. That's right.
Yeah, of course.
That's the meat right there in the middle. Everybody should gravitate to that and celebrate it. I would think, you know, and it was just
it's just the media twisting it into some bullshit that it wasn't, and trying to make it into, you know, this controversial deep South prejudice. And of course it wasn't. That was not the intent at all.
Yeah.
But I do love how Aldean leaned into it when it became something that they created that you guys didn't intend it. He just leaned into it, go, what the hell with y'all? I'm rolling with it.
Yeah, he is. I mean, I mean, so much kudos to Aldean, because no two ways about it. The majority of artists obviously wouldn't have recorded it, but any kind of blowback like that,
right?
An artist and record label would immediately, they would go backwards and they would just pull it, and just go to something else. And you would have promotion and management and everything saying, hey, Jason, there's a lot of heat on this thing right now. Why don't we come with this? It's safe. It's right down the middle of the road, and we'll come back to this later, meaning that it's never coming out ever. And Aldean, he just stuck to it. And I'm so glad he did, because as a a Christian conservative, I'm certainly guilty of, we just don't say a lot, because people say, oh, you're narrow-minded, as a Christian and everything. It's really the total opposite. Like,
of course. Like
we're never marching on anything. It's like, hey, you do your own thing. I'm not I don't have to endorse what you do. I'm not asking you to believe what I believe, but we got a chance to say something, and even before Aldean put it out, we got a chance to say something. And then when he put it out, and really what happened, the video is what caused, the biggest storm of all is the video, and gets on the View and everything. And then me, I'm a Fox News
the View,
watcher.
So it's gotta be
the View. Oh yeah, I mean, and they were so angry, and they're taking it everything so out of context, and our social media was getting blown up like crazy, and how racist we are and all this stuff. And
so what they took it out of context because it was filmed at a courthouse in Columbia, Tennessee.
That was one of the things.
Which is just like every other small town here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like every other square.
There's been Disney stuff that, what was it? Jim, like Hannah Montana or something. There's been other things,
right,
recorded there, but nobody said anything.
It didn't fit their narrative
about that. And, but it was mainly like in the video, there was, the violence. They're saying, yeah, well, you're showing, all these black people and the violence, and but there was every nationality, people wearing masks and stuff. But it was just America. It was just a snapshot.
And that was
of what
real
was
clips
and it's real.
Of stuff.
They weren't paying actors,
right,
and stuff like that. That was just what's happening in America. So really, yes, it should make us mad. But not in a racist thing. It should make us mad because we're living in a country and you have people that are Americans that are doing this, and so, but anyway, we were watching it on the hour, every hour of every Fox News show that I love. You have Jesse Waters, you have all of them coming out and says, try that in a small town. Jason Aldean, try that in a small town. Up next, try that in a small town.
You can't get that publicity.
And I wasn't writing or anything that whole week. And Neil, we had talked about it, and people be lighting us up and texting saying, man, are you guys okay? Is everything all right?
Hell yeah.
Say, this is the best time of our whole life. This is great.
I love how, yes, the fact that Jason went with it, used it. It's not like he needed it. His career was nowhere near falling off. However, I do think it gave him a supernatural boost. I think it really jumped him right back up into the spotlight by being an outspoken person like that. And I think once you have, one or two people do that, that opens up the gate to allow other people to feel more comfortable doing so. I mean, you're always going to have, your Kid Rocks and John Rich and, my buddy Brantley Gilbert and all these, outspoken guys. But now you're starting to see a little bit more.
Yeah.
We saw, when Carrie Underwood went to the inauguration for Trump, she took a lot of heat for that.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel that she probably felt a little more comfortable with that, knowing that door had already been opened.
And also all of her music started surging.
Yeah.
Even all the old
stuff.
Song that she and I and Ashley Gordy wrote, All American Girl, what ended up being top 10 that for a minute, again, is 11 years old. Jason Aldean's Laugh Until We Cried 2 days ago.
By far my favorite one you've ever written.
The video, thank you very much. The video was number 5 in iTunes. It's 18 years old.
I was about to say, that's 20 years old.
Yeah, so what's happened is you've had people that didn't know about all the music, and they said, oh, he played in the inauguration. Carrie played in the inauguration. They're going to go back and check, and they're saying, oh my gosh, this music is great. I love it. And they're just binge listening, to everything, which is great. So I just think it's good for, and John Rich had even said, something he was commenting about the artists that are, are more on the liberal side and saying, hey, I applaud them. At least they're standing up, for what they believe. I wish more country artists would do the same thing.
Yeah.
And to your point, it really has. I mean, even for me, but you have to have somebody that starts it. And for us, yes, we wrote the thing, but you had to have an Aldean, somebody that could actually do something with it. To do something, he took all the bullets. He was the one.
Well,
that
he
got
also
that
has a
thing
very
out there.
supportive wife that thinks the same way.
Oh yeah,
she's got her own thing going.
Yeah,
So it's kind of the perfect storm of being able to make that work.
And it's easy for them because, like us, that's just what they believe. So you're not selling anything. It's just like, hey, yeah, here we are.
Speaking
we're not telling
from the
you.
heart.
We're not telling you to. And people were saying it's promoting violence. It's inviting people to your town so you can. No, it's not. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's try that in a small town. Meaning that if you pull an old lady out of her car in a red light, or you try in a small town, there's going to be about
Severe
10 of us old boys going to
that.
come over and help her, and you're going to be on the ground. Anyway, it's just the whole thing. They just perverted everything to fit a narrative that would make them money and get them clicks and all the stuff.
Of course. Well, you guys go ahead.
Getting back to, sorry, just to interject. You mentioned before about the effect it had on Aldean and a resurgence of sorts, standing for something. Was there a similar thing that happened to Toby Keith when he released The Ugly American? I think that's the
Angry American. That was in parentheses.
Right.
I don't remember. I just remember that, at the time, that was shortly after,
it hit a nerve.
9/11. For whatever reason, tragedies like that brings everybody together.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, for a different analogy, like, I don't know when this will ever happen again, but if the Titans were going to be in the Super Bowl, okay? But I remember that, and you had Music City Miracle and all the stuff.
Sure.
Every time we're pumping gas, whether it's your part of town or a different part of town, we're on the same teams. Hey, well, what about them Titans? Now we don't say that right currently, but it's the same. Like, if you have a huge American tragedy, it does bring everybody together for a minute. When I say a minute, it might be a year, it might be two. It does bring you together. And unfortunately, that's what it takes, to bring people together. And then when everything's kind of okay, everybody gets in their own little, circles and starts, ooh, I hate this. I don't like this. Ooh, let's cause this. It's just it's an oddity. But Jim, to go back to your point about what was it about Aldean, because you just said.
Well, there was a resurgence, and it kind of sparked an interest in catalogs of the past and stuff like that. I'm just wondering because Toby Keith's song was controversial.
Yeah.
Right?
In the moment, I didn't realize that it was, because I was such a fan of Toby Keith and songwriting and America at the time. I wasn't well read at the time that got a lot of blowback. I guess it did, but I didn't really know it at the time.
He kind of, the Dixie Chicks and they kind of needed each other. They fed off of those energies.
It's Coke and Pepsi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. McDonald's and Burger King. Yep.
Well, so you guys actually took that successful song and created your own podcast out of it as well, where you and the guys that wrote the song have your own podcast, and is going extremely well. I mean, you guys just had freaking Brett Favre on there last week. Dude, you got merch. Like, I don't have merch. Like,
well, we have merch.
That's the same. You got merch.
We have a lot of merch. Like, a lot.
You need to push.
No, yeah, Nick, I wore this shirt for you, and my wife said you can't wear that shirt.
Of course
that's
you
disrespectful
can.
because
No.
the shirt just says "Ask me about my podcast," which my sister-in-law Hannah got for me for Christmas, and I said, okay, I'm going to wear this everywhere, which I thut was really fun. But
You're not going to offend me with my tens of followers. Like,
well, and Nick and our buddies were talking about it before we got on here. We've known each other for so long, and yes, bought a couple houses, and just you're extremely gifted at what you do, and
thank you, brother.
You're absolutely, and we have hundreds of friends that you've helped, and I remember saying, oh yeah, we'll do that, and then emails and texts, they keep going down, and you mean to do them, and then you don't.
Of course.
And then Jim, who is the producer of Try That in a Small Town podcast, he mentioned you, and he said, and I felt right away it was that it was that friend thing, guilt thing of, oh God, 10 years ago, I told Nick I would do
I'm
it
going to
any
get
day.
back to him 10 years.
So I said, yes, I'll
A
do
little bit
it.
of life has happened since there.
yeah,
The world was shut down and you just had a baby. You had some things going on.
Yeah. So I said, absolutely, we'll do it, but.
So,
but yes, sorry to go digress, but on the podcast thing, that was our friend, Wade Perry, buddy of ours and partner of ours. He was talking to Neil one day while they were playing golf, and Neil was talking about the song, and he goes, yeah, I said Kalo, and that's my nickname. They call me. I said, so he got the .com, for Try That in Small Town, and I just do that sometimes. I just get .com, something gets cheap at the time, and I think, this may come in handy, and Wade, I think, was the one that suggested, hey, you guys ought to do a podcast. And so we thought about it for a while, and I thought, that's a great idea to get, you got some momentum. There's a lot of people just like us, and we should just talk about this. And Aldean's been very, very receptive. He's been on the podcast, 2 or 3 times, and Brittany came on, and they're so much fun.
Oh, it's so enjoyable.
It's really close to their place, so we come over and we do the podcast and we talk and laugh, and you have a little bit of whiskey and everybody has fun. But we're having a great time, and yeah, the guests, we're so blessed with the guests that are coming on, and it's just really fun. And our hope was in the beginning that even though there are people that don't like us, they didn't like the message of that song because they didn't listen to the message of that song, that we're hoping that it gets successful enough one day to where we can do fundraisers, even in blue counties and blue states that don't like us, and we can go build back a barn for Mr. Miller.
Of course.
And somebody can say, you know what, I don't like those guys, but they're doing some good things. So we
anybody
hope to
knows
keep it
the
going
way
to
we
do some good.
We may think a little bit differently, but by God, we're good natured.
Yeah, and we don't just like small town people. Like we love all people.
This is Nashville. This is no longer a small town.
We love all people, and so if somebody's hurting, if there's something that we can do, anyway, we're just all about helping people, and I love God, I love Jesus, I love America, I love music, I love people. So,
amen, brother, amen. Look, I want to talk a little bit about. So I don't know if you remember, but how me and you met. You were introduced to me from a guy named Gary Smith, who is a very successful, well-respected business manager in the music industry. Mm-hmm. He was such an intricate part of my life. He helped get my foot in the door to meet artists and songwriters and people in the industry. And I always want to lift up his name because he took me underneath his wing and did so much for my career, and I'll never understand why. Like, I had nothing that I could do for that man to give him, an upward boost. He did it completely as a mentor to me. Every time I called, he answered. Every time I needed something, he was there. Every time, he had a client that was talking about, hey, maybe I need to buy a house or whatever, he would introduce me. So I have so much to thank him for. He's no longer with us, but God, I love that man so much.
Yeah, me too. He had is a good story, and he introduced me to Chip Petrie, who was a very successful attorney in this town. We've done several deals together. But when I started working with Gary, and he sold music catalogs, which that's a whole nother podcast probably. But he called and he goes, Kelley, I've been looking over your numbers and everything. He said, do you mind if I call New York and try to get this straightened out? It looks like I think they owe you a little money. And I said, sure, that'd be great. And he goes, okay. So he called me back a couple of days later, and he said, hey, I talked to him over the phone, and they realized that they had made a mistake over the last few years, and I was just wondering, like, would you want, the compensation by check, or, do you want it to be wired to you or whatever? And I said, well, how much is it? And he goes, well, it's $85,000. I said, my routing number is 064-000.
You see a suitcase of cash for all I care.
It's like, oh my God. Okay. So you talk about making fast friends. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I have.
Which I always loved Gary, because he'd call and be like, hey, you're, not just you, but other people. Hey, your boy's about to sell a catalog. You might want to touch base with me.
Yeah. He's such a good man. He had such a good, smooth delivery, and he just cared about people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did want to ask you, I'm going to set you up for this. I don't know if you remember it, But so you bought an investment property. It's there in Franklin. We think it may have been haunted. Do you remember the stories that came out about that house long after you bought it?
Yes.
Tell us the story about how you had multiple people tell you kind of the exact same thing.
Yeah, it was a straight up long-term rental, and had it for a long time. And it's a cool little property in Franklin, and we'd had renters in there, and I think it was the second renter. And I was talking to the guy after he was moving out, and somebody had said something to us about a ghost or something like that. And I'd heard a little about it, and I worked on that house like late at night and stuff, and I was always kind of looking around. I'd be over like 2 a.m. by myself in the it's kind of like one of those Silence of the Lamb basement,
Yeah.
And I was always kind of thought about it a little bit, and I said, hey, by the way, I said you guys didn't have any issues with ghosts or anything,
just
like
matter
that.
of fact, like
so
that.
I'm just asking. He goes, you know what? He goes, I didn't personally. He goes, but my wife and my child saw a ghost several times. I said, but it's a nice ghost. And I'm sitting there thinking, what? He said he would just come and sit on the edge of the bed and kind of look at him for a minute and go away. I'm thinking, what? And y'all didn't say anything. You just stay there. She goes, no, it was completely harmless. And I said, okay, that's crazy and then we called a friend of ours, Pete Fisher, who used to run the Opry, and he stayed there for a minute while they were building their house. And I called him and asked him the same thing. He goes, I never saw anything, but my wife, Hope, she did see somebody come toward the edge of the bed a couple of times. I said, what?
Oh my God.
Are you serious? Why didn't y'all not say anything? Well, we didn't want to.
Multiple people with the same story.
Yeah, and I'm like, so I
they probably don't know each other.
No, he sold it immediately. I don't know what's become of the house or the people. I don't even look when I go by Franklin Road. I don't even look at it.
Oh my God, I remember that. Yeah, I remember going in there like putting real estate flyers in there and be like, all right, throw them in and get the hell out of there.
Nick, you've sold me a haunted house.
Yeah, but for what you paid for that then, I'll take it back from you now.
Yeah, but for the price. Yeah. I'm like, you're right.
You're right. So one thing I always like to ask everybody, tying this back into, Nashville, Middle Tennessee, a little bit of real estate. What do you love about living here? Like, you started your career here. Obviously, you kind of have to be here for what you do. But what do you love about living here in the Nashville, Williamson County area?
I love the diversity for me, and just speaking of Franklin is because now we live in South Franklin, but you have Cool Springs, which you got nice restaurants, all the stuff. You got the little condos, it's kind of a tiny little Nashville. But then you also have the historic part, of Franklin, which it's right in Franklin too, just a few miles away. And you're in this whole other area.
A little Hallmark movie over there.
A little Hallmark movie, all the time. And it's packed just all the time. And it's really, really cool. And I love all the different pockets of Nashville. I mean, I lived in Antioch, and Bellevue, and Franklin. And now East Nashville, for years, that's been coming up. And there's a lot of things. Every time I go to another side of Nashville, I would say, ooh, that reminds me of Franklin. And it's just cool because there's so many really cool pockets. And we write when we're writing, like I don't write at my house that often because usually you're writing at somebody's studio, in which I don't have a studio. I have a good place to write, but I don't have the equipment and the board and all the things because I don't cut tracks or record anything like that. I'm just a straight up writer. So I'm generally traveling to somebody else's house, and it's East Nashville. It's different places. I'm like, man, how would you get over here? It takes me forever to get there. Then when you get there, it's like, ooh, I get it. Yeah. I'd live over here. Yeah. I just like all that. I like, but I am sold on Franklin, Williamson County, but even Spring Hill, which further out, Thompson Station, it's grown so much to where, my wife says, hey, I don't want to get any further out. And I'm like, yeah, but you can get a bigger house if we go further. We go further out and get a bigger house. She goes, our house is fine. So anyway, I just love it. I just love the community of it. I love that I can be in my neighborhood at my house and my neighbors, and we don't even talk about what we do. You can get a break.
Nobody cares.
And just raise your kids and cook stuff, eat stuff, watch with sports. It's great.
That's awesome, brother. Well, before I let you go, I did want to ask you, what are your 2 or 3 personal favorite songs you've ever written?
Oh, 2 or 3. Okay. Well, first, obviously,
meaningful,
I have to give, a lot of songwriters, their latest song is their greatest song, right? But this one, really, Try That in a Small Town by Jason Aldean, that I'll never, I'll always think about that song. And actually, as far as all the charts and all the things, and a lot of it's because the hate, it's the biggest commercial song we've ever been a part of.
Well, at the time it was released has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and that thing, it ended up being number one, obviously in country, but also in the Hot 100, which there's only been 22 songs since 1950 that have done that. You're on the same chart with, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, and and hey, won't you play another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song, and Convoy, and all these songs that I was in the back of a Monte Carlo driving to Paducah, Kentucky with my dad with no seatbelt on, listening to all that stuff, and so you're on those charts. So I really love that, and I love it because it has something to do with me and what I believe in. Also, my first number one, He Didn't Have to Be.
Yeah,
with
that was
Paisley.
on my list. I was going to say
it's just a very, very special song, and and I don't play it a lot because it's such an old song. We play a lot of corporate events, right? So we travel all around, a lot in Nashville. We travel everywhere and we like a traveling bluebird. We do that all the time, and it's become a good part of your income. And I don't play it because it's such an older song, but when you do, when you pull it out, and you just have, people cry, says, oh, my stepdad or my stepmom, whatever. And for the humor, same artist, Brad Paisley. I'm Still a Guy. I love how that came out. Because it was in a time written where I was frustrated again. Like I write, my wife says, you really make a lot of money off your frustrations. Your rage is working for us,
Of course.
But it's just the fact that even in the church, and I'm into the church. I was a deacon at Brentwood Baptist, for the longest time.
I grew up going to Brentwood Baptist.
Yeah. Yep. And we're like, you're a service deacon. You're visiting hospitals, and you're not an elder. I'm not making church decisions. You're just helping out. But anyway, I just I like that one a lot because it was a time where they were. When I say they, I just felt like people wanted men and women to kind of be the same. Be really nice. Just everybody just be really, really nice. And I was like, man, we're different. It's okay. I mean, if we're different. And it's just, we just started talking about this, my co-writer, Lee Miller and Brad, and how, I can do all these things. I can do this, and no matter what, it says, I'm still a guy. And that just resonated with me just as a guy, and so I love that one. Also, one other one, which is definitely equal my favorite, is because of how it came up, is writing All American Girl with Carrie Underwood and Ashley Gorley. And interestingly about that was number one 11 years ago. And I came up with that idea. I didn't have any sisters, didn't have any daughters at the time, but now I have a 1-year-old daughter next week. And I wrote a song, All American Girl, 11 years ago.
That's awesome.
I don't know why I wrote it. Now I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that was always one I absolutely loved before I had daughters. Now I have 2, and it hits different. Yeah, it does. I think my favorite, we talked about earlier, is Laughed Until We Cried. I think that's by far my favorite one.
Thank you. That's definitely up there as well, for sure.
So, well, brother, I definitely appreciate you coming. We never want anybody to leave here empty-handed. So, producer Jim, you got our gift.
Oh, man.
Got you a 615 ball cap.
Ooh, I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
we'll wear this on the podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And it's my favorite colors.
We'll definitely put all of Kelley's stuff in the show notes. Definitely check out his podcast. Try That in a Small Town. And we'll put all your, Instagram handles and all your website and all that fun stuff. So, Kelley, one of my absolute favorite people. Love you, brother. And thanks again.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.